philosophical question for you. So the conclusion and the idea that abortion is immoral rests on the premise that we recognize fetuses as people.
Yes.
Because it's immoral to kill people. Right? So my first question is, if somebody is brain dead, say the brain is actually not even there anymore, but the body is still alive, right? They're beating a hard corpse or what have you. They have human DNA. They are human, they are the human species. The question, I'm wondering, are they people? Would it be immoral to, is it obviously immoral? This is euthanasia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it obviously immoral to kill that bleeding heart corpse? Like, is it a person?
Good question.
Without consciousness?
In terms of someone who is brain dead, the first point to keep in mind is what is brain death? How do we define brain death? Brain death is irreversible cessation of the entire brain, including the brainstem. So if someone is brain dead, as it is defined, I am not killing them. They are dead. You could say they're a dead person, just like if we look at images of atrocities like the Holocaust, we don't say they aren't people, we just say they're dead people. So what I would say in that case is, I am not killing the person, they are already dead. What I'm doing is say, we're going to take a machine away that's actually pumping their heart. It is something that is basically doing the function, but the actual body of the person itself is already gone. The spirit, you could say, is gone, the non-physical self if they're dead.
Okay, so yeah, so you're saying because they have no more consciousness or what have you, they do not qualify as a person under morality. Because if they did qualify as a person under morality, it would be immoral to kill them.
Right, it's not necessarily that they don't have consciousness, because lots of people can be unconscious and not be dead.
Well,
So in this particular case, it's irreversible cessation of all function of the entire brain.
yes. So then my second part to that is, if someone is born without a brain, it might be impossible. Let's just set this up. If they're born without a brain, have never had consciousness and do not have consciousness, yet again the body is still beating, it is still alive, and maybe wouldn't be able to grow, but it's alive, right? Would that qualify?
Well, the brain is required, besides early in pregnancy, to work in coordination with all the other organs in the body. So without a proper functioning brain, to the point of actually being brain dead, the body isn't going to continue to be alive if you have irreversible cessation of all functions of the brain. Now the exception to that is early in pregnancy. Very early in pregnancy, the early embryo does not have a functioning brain, and the heart begins to beat first, and that happens about 3 weeks into pregnancy. So I would say what puts the early embryo in a more functionally impressive situation than you would need is that the early embryo has the ability to grow and develop through the stages of human development without a functioning brain, something that you and I can't even do. But besides that, once they get to that point, now someone being brain damaged is also very different from someone being brain dead. So it's important to keep that in mind too. So yeah, that's what I say.
Okay, so then my second question, last question, just becomes, say for example, take an alien, say Yoda or something like that, right? We would generally recognize it to be immoral to kill Yoda, even though he's definitely not human, right? You could think of many different species, or even look at dogs and animals and that sort of thing. That's a little bit more icky, but it's generally seen as immoral to want to kill them or to kill them. So couldn't it be seen then that it's not the fact that someone is human or has human DNA that makes it immoral to kill them, but rather that, well, what's the common denominator among aliens and people? It's the consciousness, the fact that they're rational beings. So then if you look at a fetus, before a certain period, a fetus doesn't have necessary components of the brain, as we have determined scientifically, for having consciousness, the thalamus and some other part. It doesn't have those components until many weeks, well, I think it's 20 weeks or so.
And we could debate about exactly when it has those components.
Yes.
But setting the exact precise moment aside, why in the time it doesn't have those components, doesn't it have those components?
Because it needs those components to have consciousness.
So they're not there because,
It hasn't made them yet.
and why hasn't it made it yet?
Because it has to make them at some point and doesn't start off with having it.
It doesn't start off this way.
Yeah, like fetuses don't start off having a fully functional brain or like components yet, right? They don't have them.
And why? Like, why isn't it there at fertilization?
Because fertilization only has a sperm and an egg, and neither of those components have a brain.
And why 5 days into it does it not have it yet?
Because it hasn't had enough protein and enough atoms, molecules to create the brain, right? There's a certain time in which we recognize that those parts have at least started to come into existence, thalamus, that sort of thing. And until that point, when those components of the brain haven't even shown up yet, right, we can generally conclude that there's no chance for this organism as a human being to have consciousness.
Currently. And I guess I was asking you about why, because ultimately, less time has passed by and we get back to the age factor.
Of course.
So we can't expect to suddenly instantly have a fully developed human being, the same way a newborn child hasn't gone through the changes of sexual puberty, and the sexual organs aren't fully developed. Even a newborn child's sexual organs, there's a lot more development that needs to go on. So we recognize that development is a gradual thing which occurs over time, but our value can't be based on how we currently function, but should be based on what we are, because we have to recognize our current functions change. So to draw a line, let's say at 5 weeks, 10 weeks, or 20 weeks, is as arbitrary as drawing the line at 2 years, 3 years, or 10 years, because as I showed rather in the graph that I had put up, time and again, the difference between the unborn and the born is differences in degree, not differences in kind. Why was it wrong to kill Jews?
Because they had consciousness, or at one point had consciousness. They qualified
Wow. So if they were unconscious at the time of their death,
No.
it would have been okay?
Had consciousness or had consciousness.
Why
If you
should
found
I
a
believe
Jewish
that?
person who throughout their life had never had consciousness, it could be debated that it would not be immoral to kill it.
Why should I believe that consciousness is the criteria?
Because it's the only common denominator amongst entities which are immoral to kill.
How do you know that?
Okay, well,
Why should I believe that?
because would you believe that it was, if I could imagine an alien, didn't share any of your organs, didn't look anything like you with a triangle, yet it had consciousness, maybe it spoke, it seemed fine, right? The only thing you would have in common with that being, aside from being able to understand it, would be its consciousness. Now, would you recognize that it would be immoral to kill the being?
Whether or not I would kill another being which is conscious doesn't mean within my species I determine the value of my peers based on their consciousness.
Well, of course not.
So I would say the Holocaust is not wrong because Jews were conscious. It's
No.
wrong because Jews were people. And by being human, they are people.
That's the point of contention, right?
Exactly. So this is what it comes down to. Whose definition makes the most sense? The one thing we all have in common is our human nature. Because even with consciousness, it varies to degrees. Whether you had it and you lost it for a bit because of a car accident and it comes back. Whether you're a newborn child or a person who's educated to the level you're educated at, you have to admit the consciousness between a newborn child and you still differs. It differs in degree. So if I determine your value based on how well you currently function, then we have a situation where those who function a little less aren't as valuable. And you get down to this echoes of the Holocaust thing where human beings are dehumanized by those who are stronger and more powerful. If, on the other hand, we value each other by virtue of our existence, everyone's safe. Now we can debate whether some species should be brought up to the level of humans, which is what PETA wants to do. But can't